Before we get started, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video. That way, you'll always stay connected to our stories and never miss the next adventure. Look, nobody ever plans to become a legend by stealing a shuttle, breaking it in the worst possible location, and then getting help from 3 alien predator children who could technically rip your throat out with their adorable murder mittens. But that's exactly what happened to Danny. And honestly, it tracked with how the rest of her life had been going. The shuttle made a sound that no functional spacecraft should ever make. A grinding, wheezing death rattle that echoed through docking bay 12 like a dying accordion. And then, just for good measure, all the thruster control lights went red. Not yellow, not that cautionary orange that meant, hey, you should probably look at this eventually, but full on, blazing. You are screwed, crimson. Oh, come on! Danny slammed her palm against the control panel, which accomplished absolutely nothing except making her hand sting. You were fine 20 minutes ago. You were purring like a... She trailed off because the shuttle was decidedly not purring now. It was sitting in the docking bay like a very expensive, very broken paperweight, and she had maybe 3 hours before Commander Peyton discovered she'd borrowed it for an unauthorized supply run to the lower cargo decks. Borrowed. That was the word she was going with, not stolen, because stolen implied she wasn't planning to return it. Which she absolutely was. Right after she fixed whatever had just catastrophically failed. The problem, well, one of many problems, was that docking bay 12 wasn't just any docking bay. Oh no, that would be too simple. Docking bay 12 was adjacent to the Ralthi delegation quarters, which meant it was technically restricted space, which meant she absolutely, positively should not be here with a broken shuttle and a growing sense of existential dread. The Ralthi. Right. Let's talk about the Ralthi for a moment, shall we? Imagine if someone took a Komodo dragon, scaled it up to 8 feet tall, gave it retractable claws that could punch through titanium plating, bioluminescent throat patterns that shifted colors based on mood, and then gave it a really, really intense cultural obsession with personal honor and territorial boundaries. Now imagine that species just joined the Galactic Assembly 6 months ago, and everyone in the entire station was walking on eggshells around them because nobody wanted to be the one who started an interstellar incident. And Danny had just parked her broken, stolen shuttle right next to their living quarters. "Okay," she muttered, popping the engine access panel and staring into the mechanical guts of the shuttle. "Okay, this is fine. This is totally fine. It's just a cascade failure in the thruster alignment system, which normally requires a 2-person crew and specialized equipment I definitely don't have. But I'm resourceful. I'm clever. I once fixed a coffee maker with chewing gum and spite." The shuttle did not respond, because shuttles are inanimate objects and do not care about your achievements. Danny grabbed her portable diagnostic scanner and started running through the error logs, her mind already racing through possible solutions. The thruster misalignment was causing a feedback loop in the power distribution network, which meant she'd need to recalibrate the entire system from scratch. Normally, that involved one person in the cockpit, running the calibration software, while another person physically adjusted the coupling regulators in the engine compartment. She was one person. One very alone, increasingly panicky person. Right. So, option 1. I admit defeat, call Commander Peyton, accept my court-martial, and spend the next 6 months scrubbing waste recyclers as punishment. She ducked into the engine compartment, tools in hand. Option 2. I figure this out myself, return the shuttle, and never speak of this again. I'm going with option 2. Option 2 is great. I love option 2. What she didn't know, what she couldn't know, because she was too busy wedging herself into the cramped engine compartment and trying to reach the primary coupling array, was that she had an audience. 3 pairs of eyes watched her from the shadows of a ventilation grate 15 feet above the docking bay floor. Eyes with slit pupils and a faint golden glow. Eyes that belonged to creatures who were supposed to be safely tucked away in the delegation quarters, absolutely not exploring the ventilation system because they'd gotten bored during another endless diplomatic meeting. Mallory pressed her snout against the grate, her throat patterns flickering with curious purple light. She clicked softly, the Ralthi equivalent of a whisper, and gestured with one clawed hand toward the struggling human below. Lixpo, more cautious than his sister, hung back slightly, but his eyes tracked Danny's every movement with predatory focus. The human was small, soft-looking, making strange noises while wrestling with metal components that gleamed under the bay lights. Gonfa, the smallest of the 3, squeezed between her siblings to get a better view. Her throat patterns pulsed with excited orange, the color of new discoveries, of interesting prey behavior, of things that broke the monotony of diplomatic protocol. Below, Danny was having a moment. "The problem," she announced to the empty docking bay, "is that whoever designed this coupling system was clearly dropped on their head as a child. Multiple times. Possibly downstairs." She grunted, stretching to reach a particularly stubborn regulator. "Because why would you put the manual override in a location that requires 3 arms and the flexibility of a contortionist? That would be too reasonable." She managed to get the regulator loosened, but immediately encountered the next problem. She needed to hold the stabilizer array in place, while simultaneously accessing the cockpit controls to run the calibration sequence. It was physically impossible for one person to do both. "Okay, new plan." She backed out of the engine compartment, leaving a smudge of grease across her cheek. "I'll rig up some kind of brace to hold the array steady. Run to the cockpit, start the sequence, run back, make adjustments, run to the cockpit again, and have a panic attack. It's a foolproof strategy." Above, Mallory tilted her head, processing this. The soft skin was trying to hunt alone, but the prey, the mechanical problem, required pack tactics. Any Ralthi cub knew that some hunts needed coordination, needed multiple hunters working in concert. This was obvious. Why was the human doing it wrong? Danny was halfway through constructing a makeshift brace from spare parts, and sheer determination when she heard it. A metallic clang from somewhere above, followed by a scraping sound, followed by what could only be described as the sound of something large and definitely not supposed to be there, dropping from a ventilation shaft. She spun around, wrench in hand like a weapon, and froze. Standing in the middle of the docking bay, throat patterns pulsing with curious purple light, was a Ralthi juvenile. Roughly 4 feet tall, scaled in deep emerald green, with lighter patterns along the throat and forearms. Retractable claws partially extended in what Danny desperately hoped was investigation, rather than aggression. The cub tilted its head. Her head, Danny's brain supplied uselessly, noting the distinctive crest markings that indicated female, and made a sound somewhere between a chirp and a trill. Danny's grip on the wrench tightened. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Every diplomatic briefing she'd ever been forced to sit through suddenly scrolled through her mind in panicked succession. Do not make sudden movements around Ralthi. Do not show teeth, as this is a threat display. Do not, under any circumstances, interact with Ralthi juveniles without proper supervision, as their parents will interpret this as a threat to their offspring and respond accordingly. The cub chirped again, taking a step closer. "Nice? Predator?" Danny tried, her voice coming out higher than intended. Good? Scary alien child? Please don't eat me. I'm mostly gristle and bad life choices. The cub's throat patterns shifted to bright, inquisitive teal. And then, because apparently the universe had decided Danny's day wasn't interesting enough, two more cubs dropped from the ventilation shaft with considerably less grace than the first. One landed in a crouch, movements controlled and precise. The other tumbled, rolled, and popped back up with throat patterns flashing embarrassed yellow. There were three Ralphie cubs in the restricted docking bay, with her, and her stolen, broken shuttle. "This is it," Danny whispered. "This is how I die. Not in a heroic space battle, not saving anyone important, but in a docking bay, having committed multiple regulation violations, about to be mauled by adorable predator children. They're going to put that on my memorial plaque." But the cubs didn't attack. Instead, the first one, Maori, though Danny didn't know her name yet, walked right past Danny and peered into the open engine compartment. Her throat patterns shifted through a rainbow of colors, settling on focused amber. She looked at the mechanical components, then at Danny, then back at the components. And then she pointed at the shuttle with one clawed finger and made an unmistakable questioning trill. Danny blinked. Are you asking what's wrong with it?" Mauri's throat flashed affirmative green. Okay. Danny's brain scrambled to catch up with this bizarre reality. The thruster alignment is completely shot. Cascade failure. I need to recalibrate the whole system, but it's a two-person job, and she gestured at herself. One person. So, that's the situation. The three cubs exchanged glances, their throat patterns flickering in what Danny's adrenaline-soaked brain interpreted as silent communication. Then Lixpo stepped forward, crouched down, and peered into the engine compartment with intense focus. Gonfa chirped something in rapid Ralthi, pointing at the stabilizer array with surprising precision. And Maori looked directly at Danny, her throat patterns shifting to determined orange, and made a gesture that was unmistakably offering help. Danny stared at them, stared at her shuttle, stared back at the cubs. "You want to help me fix it?" Three sets of throat patterns flashed, affirmative green. "This is insane. This is completely insane. I'm going to get court-martialed and spark a diplomatic incident and probably end up as a cautionary tale in every xenocultural relations seminar for the next decade." Danny ran a hand through her hair, leaving another grease smudge. "But you know what? Sure. Why not? My day's already a disaster. Let's add impromptu mechanical collaboration with predator cubs to the list. Welcome to the team, I guess." Mauri's throat patterns blazed with triumphant gold. And in that moment, though nobody knew it yet, history began to turn on a very unexpected axis. The thing about working with alien predator cubs, Danny discovered approximately 30 seconds into this absolutely unhinged collaboration, was that they had no concept of personal space. None. Zero. Negative amounts of personal space awareness. Maori was practically climbing into the engine compartment with her, all scales and sharp edges and curious throat patterns, while Lixpo hovered at her shoulder, watching every move she made with unblinking focus. Gonfa had somehow wedged herself under the stabilizer array, examining it from an angle that Danny was pretty sure violated at least 3 laws of physics. Okay. So, here's the situation. Danny pointed at the coupling array, trying to ignore how Mauri's breath, which smelled disturbingly like raw meat, was warming the back of her neck. These regulators need to be held at exactly this angle while I run the calibration sequence from the cockpit. The problem is, the moment I let go, They shift back out of alignment. It's like, um, she paused, searching for an analogy that might translate across species barriers. It's like trying to hold prey still while also striking from a different angle, Danny tried, making awkward hand gestures. You need multiple hunters? All three cubs' throat patterns flashed understanding blue simultaneously. Oh, oh, that actually worked. Right, exactly. Danny felt a bizarre surge of excitement. So, one of you would need to hold these, she tapped the regulators, while I run to the cockpit and initiate the calibration. But you'd need to keep them steady, no movement at all, for at least 90 seconds. Maury made a dismissive snort that Danny interpreted as, obviously, I am capable of holding still, tiny, soft skin. The cub reached out with one three-fingered hand, each finger tipped with a retractable claw that could absolutely shred Danny if the mood struck, and gripped the regulator array with surprising delicacy. Gentle, gentle, Danny coached, even as she marveled at the strength in those scaled fingers. You're not trying to kill it, just hold it. Lixapo chirped something that sounded suspiciously like a laugh. Maury's throat patterns flashed irritated orange, but she adjusted her grip, loosening it just enough. Perfect! That's perfect! Danny scrambled out of the engine compartment. Don't move! I'll be right back. She sprinted to the cockpit, threw herself into the pilot's seat, and pulled up the calibration interface. Her fingers flew across the controls, initiating the diagnostic sequence. The shuttle hummed, power flowing through the systems in test patterns. 15 seconds, 30, 60. The readings started coming in, and Danny's excitement evaporated like water in vacuum. Oh, you have got to be kidding me. She ran back to the engine compartment, where Maury was still dutifully holding the regulators, her throat patterns cycling through bored purples and greens. The other two cubs perked up at Danny's return. It's not a malfunction, Danny said flatly. Someone sabotaged the thruster couplings. Look. She pointed at the connection points, where the metal showed clear signs of deliberate scoring. Those grooves aren't from wear and tear. Someone took a plasma cutter to these, just enough to cause a cascade failure once the system heated up. The three cubs crowded around, examining the damage. Their throat patterns shifted through a spectrum of colors Danny had never seen before. Deep reds and blacks that made the scales on her arms stand up. Gonfa hissed, a sound that bypassed Danny's conscious mind, and went straight to the prey animal part of her brain that screamed, Predator! Run! Yeah, I'm angry too, Danny managed, forcing her voice steady. Someone wanted this shuttle grounded. Question is why? She ran a hand through her hair, thinking. But that's a problem for later. Right now, we need to fix this, which means standard protocols aren't going to cut it. We need to completely redesign the thruster synchronization. Lixpo made a questioning trill, pointing at the damaged couplings with precision. Can we work around them? Maybe. Danny pulled up a schematic on her datapad, spreading it out where all three cubs could see. The standard configuration runs power through these primary channels, but if those are compromised, we'd need to reroute through the secondary and tertiary systems simultaneously. Create redundancy. She started sketching out a new design, thinking out loud. Instead of linear flow, we make it web-based. Each thruster backs up the others. Power distributes across multiple pathways. If one fails, the others compensate automatically. Maury leaned over the datapad, her golden eyes tracking the schematic with predatory intensity. She chirped something and tapped one claw on a section of the design. What? No, that pathway is too narrow for the kind of power load we're talking about. Danny stopped, looked closer. Wait, Unless we split the load across 3 intervals instead of 2, then the narrow pathway becomes an advantage because it regulates flow naturally without needing additional dampeners. She stared at the cub. That's actually brilliant. How did you— Gonfa squeaked something, gesturing excitedly at the schematic, and then making a complicated motion with her hands that looked like weaving or braiding. Web hunting patterns, Danny breathed, understanding clicking into place. You're thinking about it like setting up a web to catch prey. Multiple anchor points, redundant strands, so if one breaks, the whole structure holds. 3 sets of throat patterns flashed affirmative green. Okay, okay. Danny's exhaustion was being rapidly replaced by the manic energy that came from solving a puzzle she'd thought was impossible. Let's do this, but I'm going to need your help, because there's no way I can rewire this entire system alone in the time we have. What followed was possibly the most chaotic, brilliant, utterly unprecedented repair job in the history of interstellar mechanics. Danny would call out what she needed. Hold this junction stable. Apply pressure here. Can someone reach that conduit? And the Cubs would respond with a coordination that suggested they'd been working together their entire lives, which, she supposed, they had. Pack hunters, after all. Maori's strength was perfect for holding components in place, while Danny soldered connections. Lixpo's steady hands, once Danny taught him the right amount of pressure, made him ideal for the delicate work of threading new power cables through tight spaces. And Gonfa, small enough to squeeze into gaps that Danny couldn't even fit her arm into, became their access specialist. The Cubs learned terrifyingly fast. After the first few instructions, Danny barely had to explain any more. She'd point, make a gesture, and they'd understand. It was like they were reading her intent, the same way they'd read prey behavior during a hunt. "Pass me the quantum welder," Danny said, hand outstretched, and felt the tool slapped into her palm before she'd finished the sentence. "Thanks, Lixipo." The Cub's throat patterns pulsed pleased blue. An hour into the repair, Danny realized she was humming. Actually humming, while rewiring a sabotaged shuttle with 3 alien predator children in a restricted docking bay where she absolutely should not be. The absurdity was so complete, it had looped back around to feeling almost normal. "You know what the really funny part is?" she said conversationally, securing a power conduit. "I'm pretty sure this repair method we're inventing is completely against protocol. Like, magnificently against protocol. The engineering manual probably has an entire chapter about why you shouldn't do exactly what we're doing." Maori made a sound that Danny could only interpret as, "Who cares about rules?" "I like your attitude. Terrible for my career prospects, but I like it." They hit a snag when trying to route power through the tertiary distribution node. The configuration Danny had designed required simultaneous inputs from 3 different angles, and even with the Cubs' help, the timing kept falling out of sync. "It's like trying to pounce on prey from 3 directions at once," Danny muttered, frustration mounting. "The timing has to be perfect, or—" Gonfa chirped urgently, then launched into what sounded like rapid-fire Ralphie. Her siblings' throat patterns flickered through a rainbow of colors, some kind of communication happening that Danny couldn't follow. Then, without warning, all 3 Cubs positioned themselves around the distribution node. Maori at 12 o'clock, Lixpo at 4 o'clock, Gonfa at 8 o'clock. Maori made a low clicking sound, once, twice, 3 times, building rhythm. On the 4th click, all 3 Cubs moved simultaneously, their hands connecting the power feeds with synchronized precision that would have made a dance troupe weep with envy. The distribution node lit up, power flowing smoothly through all 3 channels. Danny stared. How did you— That was— You just coordinated a three-point strike pattern on a mechanical system. Maury's throat patterns blazed with smug gold. Show-offs, Danny said, but she was grinning. Magnificent, terrifying show-offs. They worked in increasingly comfortable rhythm after that. At some point, Gonfa produced what looked like strips of dried meat from a pouch Danny hadn't noticed before. The cub offered one to Danny with throat patterns cycling through expectant colors. Danny looked at the meat, looked at the cub, thought about every xenocultural briefing that had warned about accepting food from Ralthi, as it carried significant social implications. Then she thought about how these three cubs had been helping her for over an hour, learning her bizarre repair methods, saving her from court-martial. She took the meat. Thank you, Gonfa. It was chewy, heavily spiced with something that made her sinuses clear instantly, and probably came from an animal she didn't want to think too hard about. It was also a gesture of trust that made her chest feel unexpectedly tight. I don't have much, Danny said, digging through her toolkit. But I've got— Oh, here. She produced a slightly squashed chocolate bar from the bottom of her bag. It's called chocolate. Human food. Fair trade? She broke it into 3 pieces, offering them to each cub. They sniffed it suspiciously. Gonfa was brave enough to try first, her tongue, which was disconcertingly long and forked, flicking out to taste the chocolate. Her throat patterns exploded into colors Danny had definitely never seen before, cycling so rapidly it was almost strobing. Good? Bad? Are you having an allergic reaction? Please don't be having an allergic reaction. Gonfa shoved the entire piece into her mouth, then made grabby hands for more. Okay, that's a good then. Danny laughed, the sound echoing through the docking bay. Sorry, that's all I have, but I'll bring more next time. Next time. As if this was going to be a regular thing. As if she hadn't just promised to smuggle chocolate to alien predator cubs. Her life was so wonderfully weird. They were installing the final power coupling when the station's comm system crackled to life. Attention all personnel. We have a missing shuttle from Bay 12. Repeat, shuttle missing from Bay 12. Commander Peyton has initiated a station-wide search. All Bay supervisors report status immediately. The 3 cubs' throat patterns flashed alarmed yellow. Danny's stomach dropped. That's not good. Then, a different voice, deeper and resonating with harmonics, that suggested it was being translated from Ralthi. Attention. The Ralthi delegation is searching for 3 juveniles who have left their assigned quarters. They were last seen near the ventilation access points. Any sightings should be reported immediately to Ambassador Nalthi. Maury and her siblings exchanged glances, their throat patterns cycling through guilty oranges and worried purples. So, Danny said slowly, your parent is looking for you. My commander is looking for the shuttle. And we're all here in the place neither party wants us to be, with about 15 minutes before someone thinks to check the restricted docking bays. The shuttle, mercifully, chose that moment to complete its power-up sequence. All the diagnostic lights glowed steady green. The thruster systems hummed with healthy power flow. Against all odds, against every regulation and law of probability, they'd actually fixed it. Right, Danny said, her mind already racing ahead to the incoming disaster. New plan. We get this shuttle back to its proper bay. I turn myself in for the unauthorized borrowing. You 3 sneak back to your quarters through the vents, and we all pretend this never happened. Nobody needs to know about our little collaboration. Maury's throat patterns flashed negative red. What do you mean, no? This is the plan that doesn't end with interstellar incidents. But the cubs were already moving toward the bay doors, positioning themselves in front of the shuttle like a very small, very scaly honor guard. Their throat patterns pulsed with determined gold. "Oh no," Danny whispered. "You're not going to hide, are you? You're going to—" The bay doors opened. Commander Peyton stood on one side, flanked by 2 security officers. Ambassador Nalthi stood on the other side, flanked by 4 adult Ralthi, whose throat patterns were cycling through extremely aggressive reds and blacks. Both groups stopped, staring at the scene before them. 1 human mechanic, 3 Ralthi cubs, and a shuttle that was very definitely not supposed to be in this bay. "Well," Danny said into the silence, "this is awkward." The silence stretched like taffy, thin and uncomfortable, threatening to snap at any moment. Danny could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears, could see the way Commander Peyton's jaw was doing that twitching thing that meant someone was about to receive a lecture that would strip paint off bulkheads. But it was Ambassador Nalthi who moved first. The Ralthi diplomat was easily 8 feet tall, their scales a deep midnight blue that seemed to absorb light, throat patterns cycling through colors that Danny's limited xenocultural training suggested meant extremely displeased parent. They moved with liquid grace, each step deliberate, and Danny felt every prey instinct she possessed screaming at her to run. The 3 cubs, however, did not run. Instead, they moved closer together, forming a protective line between Danny and the approaching adults. Their small throat patterns pulsed defiant orange. Maori chirped something in rapid Ralthi, her tone unmistakably defensive. Ambassador Nalthi responded, their voice a deep rumble that the translation implant in Danny's ear rendered as, "You left your quarters. You entered restricted space. You interacted with an unknown alien without supervision. Explain." "With respect, Ambassador," Commander Peyton interjected, his voice tight, with barely controlled irritation, "I believe my concern is the stolen shuttle and the civilian who took it into a restricted zone. We can discuss your offspring afterward." Danny winced. Calling Ralthi cubs offspring was technically accurate, but culturally tone-deaf, like calling someone's beloved family heirloom stuff. She could see Nalthi's throat patterns flash insulted purple. "Okay, everyone, let's just—" Danny started. "You!" Commander Peyton pointed at her, his face doing that particular shade of red that suggested his blood pressure was attempting orbital velocity. "You took a shuttle without authorization, disappeared for 3 hours, and somehow ended up in a restricted bay with Ralthi juveniles. Start talking. Now." "I can explain." The soft skin did not steal. Maori's voice cracked through the bay, her galactic common heavily accented but unmistakable. "She hunt-fixed the broken Skyflyer. We helped. Is good pack behavior." Every adult in the bay froze. Danny's brain stuttered. You speak galactic common?" Maori's throat patterns flashed embarrassed yellow. "Little bit. Learning in lessons. Is hard." "You never mentioned— Why didn't you— We could have been actually talking this whole time." "Talking is boring," Gonfa piped up, her common even more fractured than her sister's. "Doing is better. We do fixing together." Was fun. Ambassador Nalthi made a sound that the translator couldn't quite render, something between a growl and a sigh. They switched to Galactic Common, their pronunciation flawless. "Maori, Lixpo, Gonfa, you will explain yourselves. Completely." The cubs exchanged glances, some silent communication passing between them. Then Maori stepped forward, her posture straightening in a way that reminded Danny uncomfortably of a cadet reporting to a superior officer. "We were in quarters, boring meetings, Adults talk, talk, talk. No doing. Maori's throat patterns pulsed frustrated orange. We explore vents. Is easy. We hear human making distress sounds in bay. We watch. The human was attempting a complex repair alone, Lixpo continued, his comment more careful, more precise. Pack behavior says you do not hunt alone when prey requires multiple hunters. Was obvious she needed help. So we helped, Gonfa chirped. Was good hunt. We caught the problem. Fixed the broken parts. Made new pattern. Better than old pattern. Commander Peyton looked like he was trying to process multiple system errors simultaneously. You helped repair the shuttle? The shuttle that shouldn't be here in the first place, one of the security officers muttered. Yes, thank you, I'm aware, Peyton snapped. He turned to Danny. Is this true? They helped you repair it? Danny felt like she was standing on a frozen lake, hearing ice crack beneath her feet. Yes, sir. The shuttle had a cascade failure in the thruster alignment system. Complete breakdown. I couldn't fix it alone. It's normally a two-person job. The Cubs. They saw I was struggling. They offered to help. And they were. She paused, choosing her words carefully. They were incredibly good at it, sir. Incredibly good at it, Peyton repeated flatly. Sir, they learned the repair protocols in minutes. They coordinated complex movements with precision I've only seen from trained engineering teams. They suggested design modifications that actually improved the system efficiency. Danny could hear herself talking faster, the words tumbling out. The web redundancy configuration we implemented, that was their idea. They understood the power flow patterns intuitively, probably because it's similar to their hunting strategies. Stop. Ambassador Nalthi's voice cut through Danny's rambling. The Ralthi diplomat moved closer to aid the shuttle, their golden eyes scanning the hull. You implemented new design, not standard repair protocol? Yes, Ambassador. The damage required non-standard solutions. Show me. It wasn't a request. Danny glanced at Commander Peyton, who looked like he wanted to object, but couldn't quite figure out how. She moved to the engine compartment, popping the access panel. The Cubs immediately flanked her, falling into the positions they'd occupied during the repair as naturally as breathing. Here, Danny pointed to the modifications. Standard protocol runs power through linear channels, primary to secondary backup. But the sabotage... Sabotage? Peyton's voice cracked slightly. Yes, sir. Someone deliberately scored the primary coupling arrays with what looks like a plasma cutter. Enough damage to cause failure under stress, but subtle enough to look like normal wear at first glance. Danny traced the damage with one finger. Standard repair wouldn't work. We had to reroute power through a distributed network. Instead of linear flow, we created a web pattern. Each thruster connects to multiple power sources. If one pathway fails, the others compensate automatically. No single point of failure. Ambassador Nalthi leaned in, studying the modifications with intense focus. Their throat patterns shifted through analytical blues and purples. This is elegant. Multi-point distribution, like pack hunting formation. Multiple approach vectors, redundant attack patterns. Exactly. Danny felt a surge of vindication. That's exactly the analogy we used. The Cubs understood it immediately because it is how we think, Nalthi finished. Their gaze shifted to the three Cubs, who stood at attention with throat patterns cycling through anxious colors. You applied hunting theory to mechanical systems? Maori's throat flashed cautious affirmative green. And you, Nalthi turned to Danny, you taught them your technical knowledge. You translated mechanical concepts into terms they could understand. Yes, Ambassador. They're incredibly intelligent. They learned so fast. Commander Peyton cleared his throat. This is all very fascinating, but we're dancing around the core issues. 1. Danny took a shuttle without authorization. 2. She entered restricted space. 3. She engaged with Ralti juveniles without proper supervision, which could be interpreted as a teaching exchange, Ambassador Nalthi interrupted. Their throat patterns pulsed with colors Danny had never seen before, complex and layered. In Ralthi culture, to teach hunting techniques to another clan's young is profound honor. It signifies trust, acceptance, pack bond. Peyton blinked. What? The human taught my cubs her hunting methods, her repair techniques. She shared knowledge. She worked beside them as pack equal, not as threat or superior. Nalthi's voice carried a weight that made the air feel heavy. This is not violation. This is gift. Danny felt her legs go slightly weak. I was just trying to fix the shuttle. They wanted to help. I wasn't trying to. Intention matters less than action, Nalthi said. You treated my cubs as capable, as intelligent, as worthy partners in complex tasks. You did not see them as monsters or dangers. You saw them as... What did you see them as? Danny thought about the past 3 hours, about Maori's determination, Lixapo's precision, Gonfa's clever spatial reasoning, about sharing food and working in harmony, and the way they'd celebrated when the shuttle finally hummed to life. I saw them as really excellent engineers, she said honestly, and as friends. All 3 cubs' throat patterns exploded into brilliant gold. Ambassador Nalthi stood silent for a long moment. Then they turned to Commander Peyton. I request formal meeting. 2 hours. We discuss this situation properly, with all facts available. Ambassador, I still need to address the unauthorized... 2 hours, Nalthi repeated, their voice gentle but immovable as a mountain. The human will not flee. She has proven herself. And my cubs... They looked at Maori, Lixpo, and Gunfa, their throat patterns softening to warm amber. My cubs have also proven themselves. They said something in Ralti, too fast and complex for the translator to catch. All 3 cubs straightened, their throat patterns pulsing with surprised joy. What did you say to them? Danny asked quietly. I told them they performed well on their first hunt, Nalthi replied, and that they chose their pack sister wisely. Pack sister. The term hung in the air like a benediction. Commander Peyton looked like he'd been hit with a wrench. I need to call in a chief engineer. If this repair method is as revolutionary as you're suggesting, it needs to be properly documented and analyzed. Agreed, Nalthi said, and I will contact Ralthi technical advisors. If my cubs have helped create innovation, this should be recognized formally. The cubs were vibrating with barely contained excitement, their throat patterns cycling through victorious golds and greens. Danny just felt exhausted and confused and bizarrely hopeful. So, I'm not being court-martialed? She ventured. Oh, you're absolutely in trouble, Peyton said. But there was something in his expression that wasn't quite anger anymore. But it seems that trouble might have accidentally stumbled into something important. So we're going to figure out exactly what happened here, document everything, and then decide on appropriate consequences. The way he said consequences suggested they might not be entirely punitive. 2 hours, Ambassador Nalthi repeated. We reconvene, we discuss, we decide together. They paused, and someone will bring appropriate snacks. The cubs have informed me that human chocolate is exceptional, and I am curious. Despite everything, the stress, the fear, the absolute insanity of the past few hours, Danny laughed. I can arrange that, Ambassador. As the adults began filing out to prepare for the formal meeting, the three cubs crowded around Danny. Maori bumped her head against Danny's shoulder, throat patterns pulsing affectionate blue. Lixpo chirped softly. Gunfa wrapped one clawed hand gently around Danny's wrist. "Good hunt, Pack Sister," Maori said, her broken common somehow perfect in its sincerity. "Yeah," Danny managed, her throat tight. "Good hunt." She had a feeling the real hunt. The paperwork, the explanations, the bureaucratic nightmare was just beginning. But for now, surrounded by three predator cubs who'd become her unlikely friends, she felt like maybe everything would turn out okay. The formal meeting took place in Conference Room 5, which was normally reserved for diplomatic negotiations and, apparently, for discussions about mechanics who accidentally created interspecies incidents while fixing stolen shuttles. Danny sat at the large oval table, while various officials filed in with datapads and stern expressions. Commander Peyton took a seat across from her. Ambassador Nalthi settled into a reinforced chair, their three cubs arranged beside them like very small, very attentive honor guards. Chief Engineer Tomas arrived, looking like someone had just told him the laws of physics were more like gentle suggestions. "I've examined the shuttle," he announced, dropping his datapad onto the table. "I've run every diagnostic we have. The modifications are theoretically impossible." He paused. Impossible as in they shouldn't work according to conventional engineering principles. Except they do work. Better than the original design. Thomas pulled up a holographic display. The web redundancy configuration reduces stress on individual components. Efficiency is up 18%. Response time improved 23%. You'd need to lose 3 separate systems simultaneously before experiencing critical malfunction. The original design would fail after losing 1. "You're saying this repair method is actually superior?" Commander Peyton asked. "I'm saying this repair method is revolutionary," Thomas corrected, "and it completely violates standard protocol. But I'm not an idiot. This is the kind of innovation that changes entire fleets." Ambassador Nalthi's throat patterns pulsed with satisfied gold. "The Cubs' contribution is acknowledged." "Acknowledged and honestly, kind of terrifying," Tomas said. "They learned complex engineering principles in hours. I have trained teams who couldn't execute this precisely." "So am I being court-martialed?" Danny ventured. Peyton sighed. "The unauthorized use of station property is still a violation. Under normal circumstances, you'd be facing suspension, possibly discharge. However, Ambassador Nalthi has made a formal request." Nalthi stood. "In Ralthi culture, teaching bonds are sacred. Danny has taught my cubs valuable skills. To punish her would be insult to this bond. Therefore, I request alternative resolution. Danny will document her repair method. She will teach it to station personnel. And she will continue mentorship with my cubs." "You want her to teach a class?" Peyton said slowly. "I want her to share innovation," Nalthi corrected. Thomas leaned forward. "I support this proposal. We could implement this method across the entire shuttle fleet. We could reduce maintenance downtime by 30%. Minimum." Peyton rubbed his temples. "Fine. Danny, you'll be formally reprimanded, which goes in your record. You'll also develop a training program for this new repair method. And apparently, you're now a xenocultural liaison for Ralthi Engineering Exchange. Congratulations on your promotion. I think. You broke rules and accidentally created diplomatic breakthrough," Nalthi said, "is very human approach to problem solving." 3 months later, Danny stood in Workshop 12, surrounded by a group that would have seemed impossible half a year ago. 2 human engineering apprentices, one Ralphie technical specialist, and three very enthusiastic cubs clustered around a disabled shuttle component. The Danny method had become official fleet protocol. "Remember," she was saying, "the key is thinking about power flow like water finding multiple paths downhill." Maury, now wearing an engineering apprentice badge, demonstrated the proper hand positioning. "Is like cornering prey with pack. You surround. Power has no escape. Must flow through system." The workshop had become legendary on Pinnacle Ring, the place where species barriers dissolved into shared competence, where innovation happened in the spaces between cultures. Commander Peyton walked past the open workshop door, paused, shook his head with a smile, and continued on. The quarterly efficiency reports looked spectacular. "Dr. Thomas wants us to present at the Engineering Symposium next month," Danny announced, broadcasted across the entire assembly network. The Cubs' throat patterns flashed with excited gold. The door chimed. A delegation of Cathari engineers entered, their crystalline forms refracting workshop lights into rainbows. "We hear you teach revolutionary repair methods. We wish to learn. Our young ones also wish to observe." Three small Cathari juveniles peered in with curious compound eyes. Danny looked at her cubs and saw them straighten with pride. Teachers now, as well as students. "Come in," Danny said, grinning. "Fair warning, our teaching methods are unconventional." Unconventional is why we came. As the workshop filled with new students, new species, new perspectives, Danny caught Ambassador Nalthi watching from the corridor. The Ralthi diplomat's throat patterns pulsed with warm amber satisfaction. Later that evening, Danny received a message from Fleet Engineering Command. The multi-species collaborative repair protocol has been officially adopted by 48% of assembly fleet vessels. Maintenance efficiency improvements exceeding 32% across all ship classes. Failure rates down 61%. Commander Fleet Engineering requests expansion of training program. Congratulations on your innovation. 48% of the fleet. In 3 months. Danny thought about a broken shuttle in a restricted docking bay. About 3 curious cubs who'd decided to help instead of hide. About how sometimes the best things happen when you break the rules and trust that competence speaks a universal language. Her comm chimed. "Maori. Pack sister. Tomorrow we work on new project. Gonfa has idea for emergency power systems. Is probably crazy. Will definitely work." Danny laughed, typing back, "Definitely crazy is our specialty. See you tomorrow." She filed the fleet message in her absurd career achievements folder right next to the formal reprimand. Then she pulled up the preliminary designs Gonfa had sent. The cub was right. The idea was completely crazy. It would probably revolutionize emergency power systems across the entire galaxy. Danny grabbed her datapad and started making notes. She had a pack meeting to prepare for, a galaxy to teach, and absolutely no intention of following standard protocols when better solutions existed. Some rules were made to be broken, especially when you had 3 brilliant predator cubs helping you break them. And somewhere in the station, in the ventilation system that connected everything to everything else, 3 sets of golden eyes watched the workshop, already planning their next great hunt. The galaxy was full of broken things, and they were very, very good at fixing them together.